Just in time for Christmas, the Business Side of Music is excited to announce the grand opening of our Business Side of Music store. We're offering items such as hats, shirts, phone cases, coffee cups, water bottles, and much, much more. Just go to the Business Side of Music website and click on the shop button near the top of the page. Items purchased help support the podcast. We thank you for your continuing support of the Business Side of Music and wish our listeners a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the Business Side of Music.
In the studio with us today, Matt Lutz, who's the founder and CEO of Music Benefactors. Now, interesting story here. It's a small circle we all travel in this industry. A friend of ours, a guy who's been on the show a couple times, Chuck Thompson, artist manager, tells me about Music Benefactors and said, hey, you need to meet Matt and chat with him. And we had a little bit of a conversation. And then right after that, a guest that we had on our show, Karen Waldrop, turns out she is a client of Music Benefactors. Small world. So anyway, Music Benefactors is an SEC registered investment platform created to strengthen the connection between recording artists and music fans. Investors and fans help their favorite artists fund new and exciting projects while sharing the potential of royalty income generated when music is streamed, purchased, or used commercially. They, being Music Benefactors, bring the artists and the fans together. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Like I said, we got introduced through Chuck Thompson, and you and I had a conversation on the phone, and you started to tell me about the company, and I was like, this is such a unique and different approach to investing in projects, especially for independent artists that maybe doesn't have the luxury of a record label behind them or a deep pockets, maybe angel investor or investor of sorts. How did this idea come about?
Yeah. Good question. First of all, I spoke with Chuck yesterday, and he told me to tell you. He said hi.
Oh, well, hi back to Chuck. Okay.
So there you go. You know, my background is not music. It's actually from finance in the investment world. And what brought me to music were actually the investing in music royalties. As you may know, music investing is a very hot asset class right now. There's a lot of institutional investors that are looking to purchase music catalogs. And, the value that they see there is the cash flow that these catalogs generate. It used to be, you could sell a $20 CD and that would be the end of it. Now, with the advent of streaming, the income has such a long tail, and institutions love that. And that's kind of what brought me to music, investing in these types of asset classes. And then there were some changes to the laws back in 2012, 2013, and they passed what was called the Jobs Act. And the idea of the Jobs Act was to make it easier for private businesses, all private businesses, not just music businesses, to raise capital. As you were mentioning earlier, raising money for an artist is difficult.
On a good day, it's difficult.
On a good day, it's difficult, yeah. So in the idea of the Jobs Act was, private businesses, it's tough. Like it's, you can go to a bank and they have kind of a take it or leave it type approach, and they don't really lend money to businesses that need money. They're very conservative.
And I was going to say, especially with the independent recording artists, that would kind of be near the top of the
very
high risk.
Yeah, very high risk. So this Jobs Act made it easy. So what the idea of this Jobs Act was, so all private businesses, not just public or publicly traded companies, could raise money by issuing and selling investment securities in that business to the general public. And the caveat was they had to use an approved platform to do it. We became one of those platforms. The first few platforms were focused on like real estate and technology and oil and gas, and no one was really focused on the music business. So we went through the process of getting approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we're members of FINRA, which is these are the two financial regulators. So what we can do now is we can take a recording artist or a independent publisher, and we can raise money for them by issuing and selling, shares in that company to the public. Just like you invest in publicly traded companies, you could come to our platform and invest in, your favorite recording artist, a music technology company, an independent label. What's nice about this is because of the regulations in place, the regulators want to protect investors. So what they do is they put limits on how much you can invest, and it's based upon income and net worth. So, it's not a situation where you hear about someone's grandmother, investing her last 50 grand in something.
Right.
It's, there are limits. So it's based upon income. You can't invest more than 10% of your income in your net worth if you're not an accredited investor. So what it does is it spreads out the risk and it limits the risk. So, so a lot of investors can participate. Anyone, can invest in these projects. There's no, income requirements, and we can raise money for really any viable music project. So the project that we're doing with Karen, she's working with legendary producer Paul Worley, who discovered the Dixie Chicks. So they're raising money for a 5-song EP. The goal there was to raise anywhere from, say, $35,000 up to $100,000. And that money would be, goes towards the production and marketing of this EP. Investors can invest as little as $50 in the project. We're raising money for a company called Royalty Partners, which is getting into the catalog buying business, and they're looking to raise $5 million. So that's the kind of the max out amount we can raise for companies is $5 million. But really any viable project, if it's a business and it has something to do with music, we can raise money for them.
Let's back up just a little bit. When you talk about the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, how difficult was it to get music benefactors past them? Because they have a pretty strict adherence of what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, they take this seriously, and it's good that they do. I mean, the whole idea of these financial regulators is to protect investors, and they want to make sure that if they're going to give a license to a company like mine, we have the investor's interest, at heart. So it took about 8 months to get approved by FINRA and the SEC.
Is that pretty fast, pretty quick?
It felt pretty slow to me.
Yeah.
A lot of requests for information. They've got my bank records from the time I was 12 years old, I think. It was a very arduous process. And the idea is that, they take this seriously. These are business ventures, right? The idea of these projects is to make money. And, they want us to vet. They want to make sure that we have, the right, intentions in place. So we're going to be vetting these projects. It's got to make sense. It's got to make sense for the project, and it's got to make sense for investors for the potential to make money.
The artist that gets involved, do they have to go through a certain vetting process themselves? And then you talked about you have to be a business, and so we'll get into that after the break. But does the artists themselves have to go through a certain process with A, either the SEC, or B, with music benefactors before they can get started?
Yeah, great question. So the SEC and FINRA put that on us. So what we do is we have a vetting process that the artist or the business has to go through. And that's going to be, let's see the business plan. Where's if we're going to raise $100,000 for you, where's that money being spent? We want to see a pretty detailed plan. And then...
So you have to really create like a business plan beyond a mission statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we want to know if we're going to raise $100,000 for you for an album, where's that money being spent? Is it going to be in production? Is it going to be in marketing? Is it going to be videos? The investor, we have a responsibility to investors to make sure that, hey, look, what you say you're going to do, you're going to do. The other thing is we conduct background checks on the principals involved.
To make sure that there's no shady operations or
no
it's not money laundering or anything like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, so make sure there's no financial fraud that's been committed or any kind of, felony crimes in the past. If they have, it's an immediate disqualification and we can't raise money for them. So yeah, it's just, it's a very serious thing. It puts guardrails kind of in place for us. Because, anybody can come to us and say, I have this music project, right? And we get those calls. And, and I like entertaining them and I get to hear a lot of decent music from here. But, we want to see a team in place. We want to see an artist. If they don't have a manager, who's advising this person? Like who's the business manager? Who's going to distribute this music for you? So it's got to make sense as a business, as much as the music has to make sense.
In the studio with us today, here in Nashville, Tennessee, the founder and CEO of Music Benefactors, Matt Lutz.
Hi, this is Chuck Thompson with the Thompson Entertainment Group. Check out my episode on the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Matt Lutz is with us here in Nashville, Tennessee, the founder and CEO of Music Benefactors. First of all, the SEC did the vetting process on you. And second of all, you do the vetting process on the potential clients that come in. You said something in the beginning in that they need to be a business. Do they set up a company? How does that work?
Yeah, that's exactly what they do. So we have to set up, or the artist or the music business have to have some sort of legal entity in place. Those are usually going to be limited liability companies, LLCs, or C Corps or S Corps. So there's got to be an entity created. And then what we do is we actually sell shares in that entity to the public. It's I guess the best way to kind of think of it is kind of like a mini IPO or an IPO of a private company. So we create, what's unique is we can sell, it doesn't have to be just equity. We can also sell bonds. We have a music royalty bond program that looks very similar to the Bowie bond from the late 90s.
Explain that if you don't mind.
So that is kind of a take on, obviously these catalog acquisitions are getting a lot of attention. They're trading at multiples that we haven't seen. One downfall of that is if you sell your catalog, it's gone forever.
Which we're seeing a lot of artists do these days. A lot of major artists.
Yeah. Bob Dylan has, sold his.
Neil Young, Stevie Nicks. Yeah.
They are trading. And that's the institutional capital that's chasing this cash flow, which they can kind of model and put into spreadsheets, and that's what the institution's like.
And let me ask you this, because back in the day, the revenue stream for that was off of vinyl album sales and then CD sales, and now it's streaming, and the streaming income is really substantially less. Is that still viable?
It is. In the way that the model that a lot of these institutions are looking at is they're trying this. So they're kind of basing it on the streaming revenue because it's going to last a lot longer. Music copyrights last, 74 years after, the writer dies. So they're banking on that long tail. They're betting that, streaming revenue is going to increase. And the other thing that they're really hoping for is the syncing. So whenever music is played in a commercial or a TV or a film, those are, they get big checks for those. So the idea is to hire and engage people to kind of work the catalog, if you will. And that's what publishers have been doing for years.
And it's been somewhat of an overlooked market when it comes to the independent artists, which is synchronization of your music.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you can get, huge paydays, if you get a song in a commercial, especially for an independent, that's big bucks. It's a really interesting way. So they're kind of looking at different ways to kind of what they say monetize a catalog. So what we did is rather than having an artist sell a catalog, and obviously the catalog's gone forever, if there's an increase in that income or you end up getting someone ends up using your song in a commercial or whatever, you're not going to see any benefit from selling that. So what we did was we created a bond program where rather than selling it, they actually issue bonds that are securitized with that catalog. So you can pull that money out tax-free, just like you would be borrowing against equity in your home. And then you can reinvest that in your business. So you're able to pull the cash out and you don't lose control of the catalog. So you could borrow against, say, 70% of the catalog or 50% of the catalog, and the fans and investors who know your music are the investors.
What if you don't have a catalog, though? What if you're starting out, you have a little bit of an established track record, a little bit of a history, you've got a nice active fan base that gets involved in what you're doing as an artist, but they don't have that catalog, the deep assets there. How does that work for them?
That's fine too. Those are I guess those are what we would call equity projects. So you're looking to raise money for an upcoming album or a tour or a side project. Maybe you want to maybe an artist wants to start a clothing line or a brand of vodka or something along those lines, or a real estate development.
So it's not necessarily all limited to just music.
No. It really isn't. So we have the flexibility to really do, like I said, any viable music project is the way I described it. But if an artist is attached to it, we can definitely do something with them.
The artist that they've established the business, the LLC, or as you said, the C Corp, and they come to you, what is that risk factor to the investor now? Is there any guarantees, or how does that work?
No, there's absolutely no guarantees.
And that's something the investors need to know.
Yes, absolutely, and we spell that out for them. And it's on the offering pages. Yeah, so each investor or each project that we're funding or each offering that we do, we spell out the risks in the project. This is music. It is like we just said. It's not. In terms of the risk curve, it's out there.
Yeah.
Even major record labels, they got a probably 1 in 20, 1 in 15, 1 in 20 in terms of record, in terms of success and failure. So we spell it out and we let them know that, hey, look, this is you're not only investing in a private investment, where there's risk, you're investing in music. So, and that's kind of, I think that dovetails nicely into kind of these regulations that are in place, where it limits, the regulators say, you can't invest too much money in these projects. So don't invest more than 10% of your income in a private investment project like this.
So we know what the cap is.
Yeah.
But is there a minimum amount? Say if someone's making $15,000, $20,000 a year, which is that part-time worker. It's maybe working in a restaurant, but they love the artists and they want to support them. And can they get involved in that?
They can still get involved, yeah. Especially with like the projects like we're doing with Karen Waldrop. For $50, they can buy shares. And we've had a lot of investors.
And they only have to buy one share.
They can just have to buy. Yeah. So what we did is we priced with the Waldrop offering, we priced the shares at $1. So they get 50 shares. So what's really great about the offering we're doing for her is we've had investors that invested $50 and we have investors that that invested up to like $3,000 or $4,000. So it's really spread out. So everybody can participate. It's really unique because it brings everyone further into the music business by making, music fans, music investors.
You said that with her, you set, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you set the share amount, the stock amount, whatever we want to call it, at $1, that valuation. How do you determine what that amount is going to be per artist?
Yeah. So we look at kind of the cost of the project, like what, kind of that we take their budget in consideration. And then we kind of say, okay, what, kind of almost like a venture capital type valuation. Like what is this project worth? And then we kind of carve out the artist or the project, the principal. In this case, it's Karen Waldrop. Like what's her share of it? So with this situation, what we did is we said, okay, if we raise $100,000 for her project, that's going to represent 40% of the equity in the project. And Karen Waldrop will maintain a 60% stake in the project. So what's unique about that, you probably picked up on it, is it's kind of the inverse of how things work with record labels, right? The artist maintains control. They own their masters. They're the majority owner of this project. They will always be the majority owner of these projects. We're never going to sell more than 50% of the project. So it really, it gives the artists, especially the independent artists, it gives them a real stake in what's happening. You hear these stories about how major labels and, they have to recoup their.
And that recouping rate is about 4 to 1. Right. So for every dollar they give the artist or they put out, they expect at least $4 back because of their overhead. I get it.
Yeah. And they just spend, and anything they spend for that album or that project, whether it's marketing or entertainment, it goes against what that artist has to kind of earn before they can start, collecting royalties again. In this case, the artist and the fan or the investor, as soon as the project starts generating royalties, they both will start receiving income from the project.
When you talk about receiving income from the project, is there a time span that this ends, or is it evergreen on the return on investment? How does that work?
That depends on the project.
Okay.
With Karen Waldrop's project, we did it for 5 years. So it'll be 5 years of royalties will be paid off. And there's some buyout options that we put in there. So if it does really well, she's got the option of buying out her shareholders. And they would obviously, they'd be made whole plus a very, healthy return on their investment as well.
But do they have to sell, or can they keep holding on to those shares?
We give it to the option to the principal, in this case Karen Waldrop, to buy them out. So if she exercises that option, she can do that.
Gotcha.
It depends on the structure. We've had offerings where the artist wanted to have some sort of recoupment, where the investors get paid back first, and then the artist starts getting paid. But then the share kind of favors the artist versus the investor. Right. So it's not much of the upside is less, I guess you could say, for the investors in projects like that, but they're going to get their money back quicker.
Is there a cap on the return on investment, or is it just whatever that revenue stream that comes in during that period is shared with the investors?
Yeah, there's no cap. So, if an album does really, really well in those first couple years, those investors are going to participate with that.
And they also participate if there's synchronization involved too, right? It's not just sales.
Correct. Yeah, not just sales. So any revenue that is generated from the master recordings, in this case, the fans will participate. We can, structure some unique things, like if an artist wants to include touring revenue in a project, they can do that. If they want to do publishing or...
So you can literally get that finite in the detail on a project-by-project basis.
Yeah. The first offering we did was for a band called the Latin Dead. And they were a newer band, and they didn't really have much of a history. So what they did was it was kind of what they would call a 360 deal. So they gave their investors a piece of everything. So the investors we weren't able to raise the minimum requirement for them, but their idea was, okay, let's bring the fans completely in, and they're partners in this through and through. So the fans were going to get a piece of publishing, master recordings, merchandise, ticket revenue. So they were going to bring the fans into completely in.
The investor, the fan, is they're just a shareholder. They don't necessarily have any voting privileges. It's not like being on a board of directors, right?
Correct. They're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
But if the project does well, they're going to do well. But they're not going to be able to, there'll be no voting. There won't be any shareholder coups involved, anything like this, because, we make it so that the artist does maintain majority control of the project.
In the studio with us today, here in Nashville, Tennessee, Matt Lutz, who's the founder and CEO of Music Benefactors.
This is Karen Waldrop. Tune in to my episode of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hey there, my name is Dr. Garrett Hope. I am a composer, coach, podcaster, and speaker. I've been focused on building my music business since 2014 and helping others build theirs since 2015. I want to tell you about the second annual Ultimate Music Business Summit we are organizing. It'll take place early January of 2022. There will be dozens of presentations with highly actionable content, all of it available to you so you can start your business, grow your business, and ultimately make more money. Because here's the deal. Unless you earn all of your income from an employer, you are a self-employed small business owner. And if you want to do more than survive, if you want to grow your audience, or if you want to impact more people, you have to think and act like a business owner. And that means this summit is for you. This summit will give you real-world, not theoretical, strategies you can implement immediately. You don't need to be stuck with fear or living in your failures. I promise you, with all the teachers lined up, you will get something you've never thought of before. Even though building a business is hard, no one is promising it's easy. It is possible. You just need the right tools and strategies. Tickets for this virtual event will go on sale soon. To be the first in line and to get more information about the summit, presenters, and more, go to musicsummit.biz. That's musicsummit.biz and add your email to the list.
Since 1963, Korg has been creating new experiences in music and performance. That is what drove the creation of some of Korg's most legendary products, such as the Poly 6, the M1, the Electribe, the Triton, the Minilogue, the Kronos, Wave State, Op 6, and most recently the Nautilus, which is what we have here in our studio. Korg is dedicated to creating new, innovative, and uncompromising instruments which maintain the highest quality to inspire music makers, past, present, and future. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products and start creating new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, Matt Lutz, who is the founder and CEO of Music Benefactors. We have listeners on the show from all over the world. Is this something that's just domesticated within the United States, or can someone from Germany or Ireland or the Pacific Rim nations, can they get involved in this?
They can.
Okay.
So any, people from outside the U.S. are able to invest in these projects. In terms of artists doing these types of transactions or raising money for artists or foreign-based companies, it gets a little more difficult. But they can do it, but they would have to establish some sort of U.S.-based LLC or C Corp to do it.
And it's on them as the artist to create that LLC or corporation. But is that something you help them do, or do they have to get outside assistance either through a CPA or an attorney to do that?
Usually we tell them to have their attorney do it. Now we have some resources that, we can guide them to, but most are, it's not too difficult to set up an LLC anymore. You can do it online and it's can done fairly quickly. Yeah. So they do have to establish something before we can. So what happens is, and this is kind of cool. So they establish the artist will set up an LLC. In, Karen Waltrip's case, she named it KDUB. We then go and register her LLC with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So it's, it's an artist being registered with the SEC. For a nerdy finance guy, that's kind of cool for me.
Right.
So
yeah.
And then what we do is we create the offering documents, and those are filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So everyone, they're open to the public. Everyone can see those. And then we, issue and sell the shares to the public. So you're buying shares in a recording artist.
So if I'm a creative person, because you also said it doesn't necessarily have to be music, they could do a clothing line or their own brand of whiskey or wine or whatever. They need to put that business plan together and submit it to you. What goes into that business plan? What do you like to see versus what you wouldn't like to see if somebody's coming to you to get involved?
Yeah. We like to see, what we talked about a little bit, we want to know where the money is being spent. A lot of this is kind of project funding. And then we want to see, okay, where, if it's not an album project, how do you monetize? Where are the revenue streams coming from? How are you going to make money? What kind of projections do you have for this project?
So they really need to do their homework and figure some of these, I don't want to necessarily say hurdles, but they really need to figure out what walls they might run into and what doors they need to create with their project to open to make this a little easier.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to, like we talked about, it's a business, and music is a business. And I think sometimes artists forget that it's a business because they're so focused on making music, which is, for the rest of us, we appreciate that. But the people across from the table from them, whether it be working with the record label, they never lose sight that this is a business. And I think artists have to start, they're entrepreneurs. They're out there kind of doing things on their own. They're working a lot harder than most people in a very difficult industry.
Yeah, this is not a 9-to-5, no matter what.
It's definitely not a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, your retirement plan, you better hope you have one.
That's right. Or you're going to be selling your catalog.
Yeah, yeah. So how does someone get involved? How do they get this started with Music Benefactors?
So in terms of an artist, all they have to do is go to our website. There's a contact page there. Just send us shoot me a note, an email, whatever. And, we usually respond fairly quickly. Send me, some details on the project.
Do you need to hear any music demos or anything like that?
Music is important.
Yeah.
We want to make sure, we'd like to see, the brand new artist isn't going to be a fit. As much as you'd love to help them, because there's got to be a fan base attached to this.
There's got to be a little bit of track record or history attached to them.
We want to see some music. We need to see a fan base because a lot of the investors are going to be their fans. There are people coming to our site every day to kind of check things out. But most of the time, it's probably 70-30, I would say, that it's going to be, if we're doing a project for an artist, 70% of the investors are going to be existing fans already.
Is there a minimum number, and we've talked about this on the show in other episodes, the fan, saying that you have X number of fans is one thing, but having fans that are engaged or active is something entirely different because that's really your bread and butter there. So do you factor that in? Oh, they got 10,000 fans, but they only have 2,000 that are, showing active engagement with the artist.
Yeah, that's huge. And because, you look at, Instagram and Facebook and some of these artists have, thousands or millions of fans, right? Or followers or, but it's really, this is one of those where the rubber meets the road type situations. Like, can you sell out a show? Are they paying to see you? I mean, being a follower on Instagram doesn't cost anything, right?
Right.
How real are these fans? How engaged are they? So this is kind of a tell. Like, if you're going to do an offering and you're saying, you got 100,000 Facebook followers, you shouldn't have a problem raising the money.
Would they necessarily need Music Benefactors at that point, or is that even more beneficial for them?
Probably more beneficial because, what we do is, you have to have one of these platforms like ours to do it. Doing it on your own, I don't even think you're allowed to do it on your own in terms of, issuing and selling securities. So what we do is we have a system in place. We have all the money comes in is escrowed by a qualified third-party escrow agent. So that protects the artist as well as the investor. So the money comes through our platform, but we don't actually touch it. And then once we successfully raise the money, it's wired to the artist less our fee.
Okay, so that's the next thing.
Yeah.
This obviously is not free. There's a fee involved. Typically, what is that?
The fees range depending on the size of the offering, but usually they're anywhere from 5 to 7.5% of a successful rate.
Wow, that's actually very good.
Yeah, so we only collect that fee if we're successful in raising money. There is a nominal setup fee, and that covers, those filings and the background checks, and that really just covers our costs.
And you brought up whether or not they reached that goal. So let's say the goal is $50,000 and they only raised $30,000. Does it not happen, or do they receive that $30,000?
Now, if we determined at the beginning of the offering that minimum goal is $50,000, and then we have this talk with the artist and the company raising the money and saying, what could you use? Because if you set that number too high, you're not going to get anything. So if we don't raise the $50,000, the money is returned to investors.
Okay, and then when you talk about raising the correct amount of capital that's needed, do you sometimes say that's too little versus that's too much? Maybe you could do this for $25,000 instead of $50,000. Are you sure that $50,000 is enough? Do you have that conversation?
Yes, all the time. Because a lot of times artists will come in and they'll say, we just need $30,000. And I say, well, is anybody going to hear the music if you only raise $30,000? Because, it's going to, they're thinking, okay, what's it going to cost to make it? They're not thinking about the marketing side, which is become more expensive than actually making music at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, the more you can raise for marketing, the better you're going to position this music to be. And that's always been the advantage of the major labels, is they are doing an excellent job, and they have so much cash behind them that they can market just about any artist that they want to. The independent, artist and the independent label is not in that position. So if you could give an independent label or an artist, an extra 50 or 60 grand to market their music, I think it would make a huge difference in how many people hear it.
I'm so glad you said that, because it really does come down to the creative side of the brain versus the business side of the brain, and the marketing and the promotion of it is so often overlooked. Oh, I just want to create this beautiful music that I have. And I love what you said. Yeah, but how are you going to get it out there to get the return on your investment?
Yeah, and we've created some other programs for indie labels, where we could actually create like joint venture opportunities where, they could sign an artist, and rather than the indie label laying out the cash to create and market this music, what you do is you bring on investors to do that. So instead of kind of a 50-50 split that you might have with an indie label and an artist, you do a third, where the investors share in a third of the profits, the artist keeps a third, and then the indie label keeps a third. And it reduces the indie label's risk, the financial risk of taking on new artists.
What's the website that they can go to?
It's musicbenefactors.com. Everything is there. All the offerings are listed there. So I think we have 4 or 5 offerings up right now. We've got 3 or 4 more coming this month. We've got some pretty exciting stuff that we're looking at doing, maybe a possible music tech company. We have a bond offering that is in the work for an indie label on the West Coast, as well as probably 4 or 5 more artist projects we're going to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was great.
It was great to be here, Bob.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.